Hey everybody, it's Carson Gordy, the Champagne Sports Anchor, and let's just get right to it. Illinois, 5-7 in their last 12 basketball games. They got a tough schedule coming up. They got to play Duke. They got to play the Michigan Wolverines, and they also got to play Purdue. You know, a team that's had their way against Illinois for the last pretty much 4 years with Matt Painter. When I look at Facebook comments, a lot of the times, people are sometimes concerned whether Illinois is going to make the NCAA tournament. I do have to report to you, after looking at numerous projections and other bubble teams, Illinois is safely going to make the NCAA tournament. Right now, they are currently, they have a 99% chance of making it according to team rankings. That's a system that goes through thousands of computer simulations, compares Illinois to other teams. Illinois is going to make it, even if they lost out, even if they finish 17-14 somehow and even lose to Iowa. It seems like Illinois is still going to be playing in the big dance. There's multiple reasons why Illinois is safely in the NCAA tournament. Number one, the advanced metrics, they rate them high. Illinois is 21st in the country in KenPom. They used to be a top 10 team earlier in the year before this cold streak, but they still have a highly rated offense compared to other teams in the country. Reason number two, they have a lot of good wins. In college basketball, it kind of goes through a tier system. There's quad one, quad two, quad three, quad four. You lose a quad four, you're screwed. Quad three is really ugly. You want those quad one wins. Illinois got 7 of them. That's the tied for third most in college basketball. I know it seems like a little while ago, but Illinois actually has a pretty impressive rack of wins. We're talking about Missouri down at the bragging rights game. Missouri's a top 15 team in the country. That's a great win. Beating Oregon on the road by 32 points. Huge win. Beating Wisconsin at home in December. I mean, Wisconsin's got one of the best offenses in college basketball. That's a highly rated win for Illinois. And finally, UCLA, just a couple weeks ago, good win. And that kind of goes into the third reason. When you compare Illinois to these other bubble teams, Illinois right now, they're projected to be a 7 seed after that recent loss to Wisconsin. Usually bubble teams are around 9 to 12 in the seed range. So Illinois still got a little bit of time before they actually enter the bubble. And when you look at the teams that are on the cusp, Ohio State, Vanderbilt, Arkansas, Oklahoma, Illinois has more quad one wins than all those teams. Illinois beat Arkansas by 13. Illinois beat Ohio State. Illinois' KenPom ranking is a lot higher than those teams. Illinois is 21st. The next closest is Ohio State, who's at 32. And that's the thing with the schedule coming down the stretch. Even if Illinois lost to Duke, Michigan, and Purdue at home, those aren't bad losses. Michigan and Purdue are 2 out of the top 3 teams in the Big Ten, or 2 out of top 4. Duke is probably going to win the national title. So if you lose to Duke at Madison Square Garden, nothing's really going to happen to you. Illinois has built up enough goodwill from early in the season with strong wins, and the analytics are sticking up for them. However, there's always 2 sides to a coin. Is just making the NCAA tournament considered a success? For a lot of Illinois fans, they would say no. This was a team before the year. Brad Underwood said, this team has a higher ceiling than last year's Elite Eight squad. The team that went 29-9 with Terrence Shannon Jr., made the Elite Eight, and had the second best offense in college basketball behind only UConn. Underwood said to his team, I want to take you guys to San Antonio. I can bring you there. That's where the Final Four is being held this year. And early in the year, you know, it seemed like Illinois was pretty good. I mean, they started 12-3 and had a long stretch of good wins. Kaspars Jakiconis was playing like an NBA lottery pick. I mean, he is projected to go 5th in the NBA draft. Kaspars was scoring 20 points per game, getting 8 assists. I mean, this team looked like they could make the Final Four. That's what a lot of national analysts were saying. But since that disgusting game against USC on January 11th, things have gone downhill. Illinois, they're 5-17. Illinois has become one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the Big Ten. They were ranked like 17th out of 18th, and they shot the most. So you're shooting a ton and you're making the least amount. That was hurting the offense. Over the last month, Illinois' defense, when you're compared to the other Power 4 schools, it's one of the worst in the country when it comes to efficiency. Giving up 80 points to Michigan State, giving up 95 points to Wisconsin. USC had a really good day attacking the basket. Illinois isn't as strong down there. But when you do look at Brad Underwood, you know, when he talks to the press, he acknowledges that nobody likes to hear excuses, but he does say, you know, there has been a lot of injuries and illness so far this year. Whether it was Tomas Ivicic with a bad ankle or mono or the flu, or Jake Davis having the flu, or Kaspers Yakichonis being out with a left forearm injury. Brad Underwood talked about how it's affected team operations.
And I think we've had one practice since our West Coast trip where we've had our whole team, and that's been challenging. It's changed some roles and so on and so forth. But I know we'll have Tommy back today, and we'll see where Jake goes with his sickness. The bad thing is it's been lasting 3 or 4 days, and Tommy lost 7 pounds and multiple IV bags just to get there. Okay, who else can we stick in there? And when you work on one thing and you have to go do another, that's been challenging. But no excuses. Guys got to step up. We've got to adapt. We've got to get back to some of the things offensively we're doing. We're still a top 15 offense.
And I think the injuries have shown that maybe the depth just isn't as strong where Illinois can't overcome this. I mean, there were some big names in the transfer portal this year that you thought would probably be more consistent. One guy's Trey White. Trey White's a former 4-star that played at USC in Louisville and then transferred to Illinois. Month of December was just phenomenal for Trey. Phenomenal rebounder. Brad Underwood thought he was a good defensive player. And most importantly, he was scoring 17 points per game over the month of December. I mean, this is a guy that was attacking the basket, super athletic dunks. But since January 11th, he hasn't hit double digits. There was even times that Trey White became a bench warmer. He did not play against UCLA and Michigan State. Brad Underwood didn't play him. And even in the last game against Wisconsin, he didn't make that much of an impact. Another guy we've seen is Kylan Boswell. That's the guard that transferred from transferred from Arizona. He's originally from Champaign. His defense at the beginning of the year was one of the best in the country. He shut down Alabama, played great against Tennessee. Brad Underwood called him one of the best on-ball defenders in college basketball. He's still above average defense, just not as elite. And offensively, he's been struggling. This was a guy that made 38% of his threes at Arizona. Right now, he's shooting below 25% from deep. That was supposed to be a big part of the offense, was Boswell, knocking down those catch and shoot opportunities. Over the last 7 games, he's averaging 7 points per game. This is a guy that starts practically every game. You expect your number 2 guy, your shooting guard, to score more than 7 points. Ben Hummerkaus is a guy that's been dealing with a lot of inconsistencies shooting. This was a guy that made 41% of his threes at Evansville last year. This year, he's only making 34%. There's games against Nebraska, he goes 0 for 8. Against Michigan State, he goes 0 for 6. Against Wisconsin, he did not have his most efficient game, only going 4 or 13 overall from the field. This was a guy that was considered one of the most hyped up players coming into Illinois this year. Brad Underwood called him the best shooter on the team. We just have not seen the consistency from the 5th-year senior. And regarding the freshmen, they're very talented. Kaspers Yakichonis will be in the NBA. Will Riley will be in the NBA next year. Will Riley's been great, attacking the basket. He's been making more 3-point shots. Just sometimes freshmen have quiet games where they don't show up. Sometimes there's games with Kaspers where he makes probably 1 or 2 or 3 or 4 or 5 too many turnovers. But that's what happens with youth. Those are the top 2 guys when you're talking about raw potential. Those are the guys that have the highest ceiling. We saw that with KJ over the month of December. Game-winning shot against Missouri. Great against UCLA a couple weeks ago. Scored 24 points against Minnesota. He's a pro, but he's going to have inconsistent games as a freshman. Will Riley's an absolute microwave, but we've seen him month of November, December, January was rough. So when those are your top 2 guys, sometimes you're going to have some speed bumps. But compare that to Illinois last year. Who were their top 2 guys? 5th-year senior Marcus Damask, who scored 15 points per game, great booty ball, good ball handler. And then you also had Terrence Shannon Jr., All-American, first-round pick for the Minnesota Timberwolves. Scored 23 points per game, one of the best slashers in college basketball. And then you want to sprinkle in a little bit of Coleman Hawkins, who could pick and pop some threes and a good defensive player. Illinois was old, and you could count on them. You knew Terrence was going to get you 20 points. You could count on it. You knew Marcus was going to score 15 and play well. This year, they're very talented, but it's not as consistent. And that's when you're starting to see the losses rake up. Sure, if everything goes right, they beat UCLA, they beat Oregon. But you have a game where, Casper's has an off game against Nebraska and they lose in overtime. Or Casper's is out for USC and they lose to the Trojans at home, despite being 13-point favorites. Right now, they are 17-10 and 9-8 in Big Ten play. That was not the expectation coming into this year. The expectation was top 4 Big Ten. After the first 15 games, they were projected to be a serious contender to make the Final Four and be a 3 seed in the NCAA tournament. Now they dropped down to a 7. And if they keep losing those games, they're going to drop down to 8, 9, or potentially even 10, if they don't seal a game against Purdue or Michigan. That's the one thing, when Illinois lost to Wisconsin on Tuesday, they lost 95-74. And this is a Wisconsin basketball team that is very old. Tanji transferred from Colorado State. He's a 5th-year guy. You got Stephen Krall, who's been around for freaking 8 years. He's been around forever. And it's finally gelled for the Badgers. The last couple of years, Wisconsin has been world beaters, but they've developed this over the course of years. They've roster built. They've had retention. And they're going to be a 3 seed or a 2 seed in the NCAA tournament. They're front runners to win the Big Ten. And out of 365 teams in college basketball, they have the 6th best offense. Brad Underwood said they pass the ball very well and their old is dirt. And Brad Underwood, he talked about in the post-game press conference, he respects Wisconsin's oldness and he knows how it feels.
Oh man, we had a few of those last year. It's nice to have those. And you've got one of the oldest teams in the country. You have no idea how valuable that is because all you do is get confidence and now you can just joystick.
As you heard him say, he had it last year. He had it with Marcus and Quincy Guerrier and Coleman Hawkins. And I think just the one thing we got to remember with Illinois basketball and just in college basketball in general, not everybody can be John Calipari, Kentucky from 2015. Not everybody can be Coach K from 2016 to 2020, where you just have 1-year rentals and extreme roster turnover. Illinois lost 11 or 12 guys from last year's roster. The only guy that returned was Trey Gibbs Longhorn. When you have this many new guys and you're counting on Ben Hummerkaus to hit, and you need Trey White to hit, and you need Kylan Boswell to hit, and you need freshmen like Will Riley and Casper Siakachonis to bring it every game, there's just a lot of unknowns. And we've seen that. Brad Underwood has done best over multi-year projects. Everybody remembers last year's Elite 8 team with Terrence Shannon. It was a great team. 29-9, best NCAA tournament finish since 2005. But what about the year before with Terrence Shannon? When Terrence Shannon would take halves off. When he would only attempt 4 shots against Penn State. When Matt Meyer was, sometimes caused some problems. That Illinois team last 2 years ago was a 9 seed. They finished 20-13. There was people super angry at Brad Underwood's coaching style. But guess what he did? He brought back Luke Goody, Ty Rogers. He brought back Terrence, and he brought back an old guy with Marcus Tomask. It was an old team with a couple new transfers, and they brought back a lot of the key pieces from the year before, and it turned into a great year last year. What about that Io DeSumo Kofi Coburn run? When Illinois got a 1 seed in 2021, and then in 2022, they won the Big Ten with Kofi Coburn. What made that so great? That was a 4 or 5 year project. Brad Underwood, because of COVID, was able to get DeMonte Williams and Trent Frazier, 2 4-year starters, back for multiple seasons. He was able to develop Io DeSumo over the course of 3 years. When Io first got there, they went 12-21. It was the most losses in Illinois history. But he brought them back. Kofi played for 3 years. Trent Frazier played for 5 years. DeMonte, 5 years. Io, 3 years. When you bring back retention, Brad Underwood, that's when he has the big years. So this year, maybe expectations were maybe a little too high for this team. And I know it's tough because after a 12-3 start and great wins over Missouri and Oregon, you think, hell, they're going to be, they can make the Final Four. But we've just seen the combination of youth, combination of inconsistent shooting, and also, yes, injuries and illness have handcuffed this team. And it would be awesome if they get back together, fully healthy for the NCAA tournament. If they're a 7 seed, they can take down a 2 seed like Iowa State. If they can even get up to a 6 seed and get a good win over Purdue, maybe they can take down, a 3 seed like Texas Tech. But just right now, we just haven't seen the consistency all year. And jumping over to their next game, they're going to Madison Square Garden to take on the Duke Blue Devils. You ever heard of them? Coach K's not the coach anymore. Krzyzewski's retired, obviously, a couple years ago. This is John Shire's 3rd year. And the guy's absolutely rolling. Duke's got an 80% chance of winning, according to ESPN Analytics. This game's going to be played at Madison Square Garden, which is going to be the 3rd year in a row Illinois played there. And they're going to be taking on one of the best players in recent college basketball history in Cooper Flagg. This is a guy scoring 19 points per game, shoots 36% of 3, and he's projected to be the #1 pick in the NBA draft next year. Pretty good guy. And Duke doesn't have a bunch of double-digit scorers, but they got depth. They got a bunch of guys that score 8 points. They got a guy that's 7'2", a center, and he's shooting 71% from the field. So this Duke team's going to be really difficult to beat. When you look at the rankings, advanced analytics, that are the #1 team in the country. For Illinois, play your heart out. This game, if Illinois does somehow win this game, they're going to jump up the NCAA tournament seed line. But without Merez Johnson, this game's going to be tough for Illinois to win, for sure. And Brad Underwood also just thinks this is really good, exposure for the program playing in Madison Square. A couple of years ago, Illinois played Texas there and they beat them. That was a top 10 Texas team. Last year, they beat Florida Atlantic, who's coming off a Final Four run. That was Marcus Dumas, coming out game. That was a great game. So Illinois, they're trying to win 3 in a row in New York. This is definitely going to be their toughest challenge, though. But this is going to give you an NCAA tournament feel. I mean, Duke's going to be a 1 seed. So we're going to get a pretty good idea of how Illinois matches up against, great caliber programs. God forbid if Illinois drops to an 8 seed, they're going to be playing a team like Duke in the second round, for a spot in the Sweet 16. If Illinois only loses by a couple points or even wins the game, that's going to give Illinois fans a lot of confidence during, let's just say it, a cold streak since January that has maybe depressed some fans. And this could also just be good exposure for the program. I mean, Illinois is developing a brand. I talk to high school recruits. I just talked to Joe Nunez, who's a point guard from New York. He's getting recruited by Orlando Antigua. He's very interested in Illinois. And a big reason why is because of the nice facilities. He likes the player development. Io in the NBA. You look at guys like Marcus Dumas, developed very well. You look at a guy like Terrence Shannon, who's starting to get NBA minutes. Brad Underwood developed him. So for Illinois to continue to go to challenge themselves, play the Dukes, and show that they can compete against the big boys, that's going to keep helping recruiting and going to keep the good times going. And just finally, real quick, if I don't get to it next week, after Duke, Illinois is going to be back in Big Ten play. They're going to be hosting the Iowa Hawkeyes. Iowa is a program that's actually reeling. Sometimes you think Illinois, it's the end of the world, that they, could be a 9 seed in the NCAA tournament. Iowa would love that right now. Fran McCaffrey, their head coach, has been there for 15 years, is squarely on the hot seat. He could be fired. Right now, they're 14-12, and Iowa, they still got a really good offense. They got Payton and Ford scoring 16 points per game, or Josh Dix, 14 points, or Owen Freeman, 16 points. But the issue is always with Fran McCaffrey is that they can't guard anybody. They couldn't guard a 7th grade, middle school team. According to Ken Pond projections, Illinois is projected to beat them 90-79. That's a lot of points for a computer projection. So if Illinois beats Iowa, they clinch 10 wins in Big Ten play, and that will officially end any talks of Illinois potentially missing the NCAA tournament. But of course, Illinois got bigger expectations just a couple of weeks ago. Before they lost to Maryland, people were saying this team can make a Final Four. And I know Illinois wants to get healthy. Merez Johnson right now, he's got a broken left wrist. Brad Underwood said it's pure speculation if I think he can come back. He's going through the medical protocol. He's going through the rehab protocol, but it's unknown if Merez Johnson is going to return. It's unknown if Tomislav Ivicic can stay healthy. Guys had flu, mono, bad ankle. If Illinois doesn't have those two guys, they lose. You saw that against Maryland. Ivicic didn't play. They lost by 21 points. Ivicic didn't play against Nebraska. They lost. with Illinois' front court, when those two guys don't play, then that's when they have to get Jake Davis, Trey White, Ben Hummerkaus, Kerry Booth. These are undersized guys trying to guard Big Ten bigs. It's just too much for the defense to handle. So bottom line, Illinois, big game taking on Duke, 7 o'clock on Fox. Should be a really good game in Madison Square Garden. Illinois trying to get that big win and also trying to, secure a better seed for the NCAA tournament. They've dropped from a 3 seed to a 7 seed. If they keep losing, they're going to drop further. But they got plenty of opportunities to boost their resume. Duke, Purdue, Michigan. Great games, and Illinois is going to have a chance to compete in these if they're making their 3-point shots and can get in transition. Well, thanks everybody for watching. I'm Carson Gordon, the Champaign Sports Anchor. Take care. Thank you for watching, and make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel. Be sure to watch more videos from News Channel 20.